briefly, let me just say a few things about what you've got here, right? Discussion is potentially a really powerful and effective form of learning. However, it really has to be done well, because this is one that goes way off the rails without good leadership, right? And actually, people need to be trained how to have a good discussion before you try to have good discussions. That's one of the things I've learned. So when I use this in class, I have a little section on, okay, let's talk about what a good discussion is. Let's talk about the worst, useless, waste of time discussion you have been submitted to. Let's talk about what we actually want to practice as a good form, right? So, Churchland is also very susceptible to this. Wandering, meandering discussions where all kinds of interesting things are said, but not a lot of real learning goes on. Can I say that? Sorry, but I'm just telling you what some of my experience is. So, it could actually be really important, and there's various notes in here. There's an excellent book here by this chap named Christensen from Harvard. Again, that's the sort of the classic. Moving very quickly, case method is the same way. Cases are really, really good. I teach ethics. Case study is great for ethics. Oh my gosh. There's a story here about, that I put in the notes we won't take time to look at. If you're the guy at a hotel, and a taxi company is offering you a bit of a kickback for directing business his way rather than somebody else's way, and you know they're actually getting better service through the little arrangement that you've actually got, the customer will have a better experience. Do you do that? All right, so what happens is you have a case like that, and it allows you to say, okay, how do you even identify the issues in that case? Whose perspective are you looking out for, right? What are the complexities that you're looking at? How would you decide that if you were the guy here asking the question, what should I do if I've been offered that sort of little kickback arrangement? Right? Really interesting stuff. Really fun. It gets at all kinds of principles from the case to the theory, right? As I said before, not from the theory to the application, but from real life to how do we think about this? And how we all think about it is we have certain commitments, we have certain values, and we have certain principles that we really believe are right and wrong. People start to articulate that. Then you say, well, why do you believe that? Right? And when this is in conflict with that, how do you decide? Then you're into all of this business here of moral formation. And how did you come to those views? And why do you think people should share them? Oh, and it's great fun. All about a taxi kickback scheme. Fun. So, it can be very effective. There are whole modes of teaching in certain areas that are very geared towards this. Medical school, for instance, is very geared around case teaching, right? The patient in the bed, that's the case. How are we going to understand the condition? It's classic. Law school teaching often uses this. Professional education often uses this. The MBA sort of business education often uses cases, right? We in the theological realm probably don't use it enough, actually, right? It's also possible. So, can be done very well, can be done very badly, as so many other things. I've got some notes in here for you. The tutorial. I always throw this into the mix because it was the most formative form of learning that I did in my education, which was 2 years I spent in Oxford as a student with one-on-one tutorials. And the way that this works has got some principles in it that are really important. So the reason for telling you this little story is for the principle of learning that is at the heart of it. The principle of learning that's at the heart of the tutorial method of one-on-one teaching is you, as a learner, are responsible for your learning. You are responsible. No spoon feeding. The way it works in the Oxford system, where I wrote 2 essays a week for 2 years, was the professor is the one that sets the assignment, gives you some reading to recommend, but not every last detail of it, a starting place, but not everything, sets you a question to answer, a question, go answer this question. Sets you off on a path. You do your own work, you do your own reading, you do your own talking to whoever you can find on the street corner, ask them their opinions. You come back with your essay that you've written as you've tried to answer the question, and you then present it to your teacher. right? In my case, that was largely reading them aloud. Some case it was giving it in written form in advance. And in some cases, it was then going through the essay literally line by line. And in some cases, the professor wanted to just listen to the whole thing and then say, well, let's go back to the beginning. Let me find your first mistake, young man. And then you melt into the chair a little bit. But so the point there is what? I'm responsible for my own learning. I'm digging, I'm finding, I'm thinking, I'm formulating, I'm trying to answer the question. I'm trying to put it forward in a way that makes sense. I'm responsible for my learning. In the Oxford system, then Cambridge too for that matter, lectures are all optional. They're all supplementary. The real learning of your degree is what you do in that sort of sense, right? It's what you're learning in dialogue with your tutor as you're responsible for your own learning. Okay? Then what you do is you come and you get feedback. Right? You get immediate feedback right on the spot where you know what flew and what didn't fly in your essay. Yeah? One of my professors fell asleep in the middle of one of these. It was very funny, and he not only fell asleep, but when he woke up because the telephone rang that was sitting on the table, and in the process of being jolted awake, he knocked it on the floor. I'm not making this up. It's just, I have a witness. I was sharing that tutorial with somebody, and he of course made on like nothing had happened, and it's just carry on with your essay. He'd been asleep for like 10 minutes. It was just fabulous. So when the tutor is awake, you're getting feedback, right? Specific, immediate, tailored feedback of the kind I was talking about earlier, right? Tailored to you, to your situation, immediate, not weeks and weeks later, when it's fresh, when it's live, right? You're getting expert feedback saying, well, that didn't actually work. No, you're not right about that. That's not the argument, or that's not what that person meant, or whatever, right? And then what you do is you go away and you do it again. And you do it again, and you do it again. And you keep on doing it. I did it for 2 years, right? Eventually you get fairly good at it. At first I was terrible at it, right? And I, kind of slithered under the door on my way out. It's like, oh man, that was terrible. I completely missed it, right? But all good principles in that, right? All good learning principles. You're responsible for your learning. You're applying yourself. You're doing active learning the whole way. You're accountable in dialogue, in a very dialogical situation with a real expert on the subject. These are some of the best scholars in the world in their field. You get access to that knowledge. They give you feedback, and you go away to learn and try to do it again, and you have another chance to improve. So there's a continuous improvement cycle. All that's very powerful. Right? What if we gave individual attention to people in the areas of learning like that? Right? What if there was that sense of accountability for what you're learning? I was on the hook. Oh my gosh, was I ever on the hook? I was sweating because I was on the hook. I came out of those things exhausted. It's like an hour, in the arena with the lions. I made it, right? I lived to fight another day. There's something really good about that, though. When you're on the hook for your learning, when you have to do something with it, when you have to be accountable for it, when you have to say, gee, I don't know what I really meant there, right? Or this is why I thought that, and they say, dead wrong, right? You missed the point, right? That is where learning happens, okay? Just one little story. I had a set of tutorials with a man named Ralph Walker in Oxford actually in C.S. Lewis's old rooms where he used to live and teach. It was really quite fun. And Ralph had a series of books by C.S. Lewis over in the corner of his bookcase. So he was an interesting guy. Teaching me Immanuel Kant, the philosophy of Kant. Very heady stuff. Oh my gosh. So 4 weeks in, halfway through the term, I've gotten very little direct feedback. I mean, this stuff about the lectures, but am I really improving or not? So I say, Dr. Walker, what could I do better for the next time? And he sort of, absentmindedly looks at his desk for a while and sort of fumbles with his papers and then says, come closer to the truth next time. I thought, what in the world? What kind of feedback is that? Come closer to the truth next time. So that's what I tried to do. So the point is that in that little funny comment, which I've always remembered, is it's the teacher and the student together in a common pursuit of the truth. Some insight, right? Some learning. Right? That's what was great about that comment. Another way, that was a totally unhelpful comment, right? Just like, that's not what I was looking for. But there's something that's almost inspirational about that, right? And maybe that's why he gave it that way. Likewise, if you think about this in church terms, there's a kind of element of one-on-one discipling, which is really a form of mentoring. No, you don't have to write a formal essay for a tutor and present it, right? That's not the structure. But the same dynamics of an accountable relationship with somebody who's investing time in you, who's bringing some expertise to it, in a caring environment, you have a common goal of something like truth or life or faith or discipleship that you're working with in that way, that's very, very powerful. Older-fashioned models of discipleship put a lot of emphasis on that one-on-one mentoring, discipling relationship. I hanker after the church really taking those seriously because of the power of all that model. Not just what I've experienced sort of in the Oxford setting, but other mentors that have worked with me in my life. Very powerful way of learning. And sometimes what we're doing, I think, in church land is adopting the structures and patterns of formal education rather than non-formal and informal education. This is informal in the sense that it's not structured, but it's very substantial learning, right? When done well, like all of these methods, that's very powerful. Right? That exemplar role is very important. Accountability for what you're learning is important. Feedback about what your goals are, very important. Chance to set individual goals with people in terms of their own growth and accompany them in a journey, very powerful. Are we training and equipping people to be those sort of disciplers for another generation? How is the faith learned? How is faith formed? Where will future leadership come from? It's going to come out of people whose lives have been invested in by people in a mentoring, discipling way, my argument would be, as well as all of these other means. That doesn't mean don't do a whole big Bible class. Yes, do a whole big Bible class. I'm all for that. Do it well. Don't PowerPoint people to death. Keep to the main thing, etc. Do it well, but many methods, including more individualized attention, right? More individualized attention. It's very powerful when done well. It can also, of course, go wrong, right? In lots of different ways. Mentor or mentee can both drop the ball. Mentor can have a kind of dominating, exploiting mindset emotionally, theologically, pastorally, in other ways. That can go wrong. I've seen that go wrong. All these things can go wrong. It doesn't mean they're not worth trying. That would be my argument. Okay? So those are just a few things here about some methods. Lots more to say. Tons more. Lots of other methods. But if we think about some of those and what their potential is for your setting, there's a lot that's I think there.